Hey, welcome to the Daily Reset. So the chances are that if you're watching this, you've found me on social media, on some kind of social media platform, most likely Instagram, because I've been running ads recently. So I've been sharing a message that's resonated with a lot of people. But I wanted to start creating long form content again. So you've probably watched a couple of reels or a little bite size piece of like a message that I've shared. And I think the problem is I have this kind of love hate relationship with social media. And you need to understand that it's a tool to use. And for me, to share a message which I want to share, it's a really useful and it's a powerful tool. But we have to remember it is simply a tool. And the problem with creating like reels and these little bite-sized pieces of content is that people scroll through too many of them. People scan too many of them, watch too many of them on a daily basis. And so you forget the messages. There might be a little nugget in one or two of them, but because you're scrolling and flicking through this like tidal wave of information, you forget the valuable messages and you just kind of move on. And what it does is it takes up valuable space in your brain. James Allen. So if you want to start compiling a reading list, by the way, this is going to be really informal. This is just me sitting down with a coffee. This is a bulletproof coffee. And this series is called The Daily Reset. Okay. And I always used to do this. I used to do this years ago. And I would just sit down, make a short message with a coffee because I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to have a deeper conversation with some people who have an attention span, who are looking to go deeper in their lives, who want to make some transformation, some radical change, because that requires depth. That is a journey that requires depth. More about that later. And so I always used to do this, and then I stopped because I basically deleted all of my social media accounts. I deleted Instagram, I deleted Facebook, I didn't have TikTok. I had an account, I never used it. I deleted that as well. That was because of a conversation and an argument with my son, who was 14, 13 at the time. And that's very linked to today's message, which is how can we reclaim our kids' minds and attention from screens and digital masters. And so I'm going to be having these conversations, going a little bit deeper than you can go with the junk food reels in social media. So first book recommendation, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Okay, this is kind of an old-fashioned read. You have to concentrate a little bit. It is an amazing book, and I would recommend everyone read this. So back to the reels and the junk food. So the social media reels, the shorts, the little bite-sized pieces of content, they're designed by marketers, and they're designed to do a job, to grab your attention, to hook your attention and plant seeds. They're little memes. What is a meme? Well, Richard Dawkins wrote about this in The Ancestor's Tale, or one of his books. A meme is a mind virus. So a little thought experiment for you quickly is, have you ever noticed how similar the words influencer and influenza are? Have a little think about that for a minute. Anyway, so a meme, which is what the reels and the little bite-sized pieces of content are, they're memes. They're little mind viruses. It's trying to sow a seed and put it into your brain. The problem is most of them are just empty. There's very little value in them. So I liken it in a nutritional terms, because you need to feed your mind just as you need to feed your physical body. And related to that, if you put junk in, you get junk out. So just think about that for a moment. The reels, the short form content, the little hooks to grab your attention, which I have used, they are seeds. They are like junk food, though. They're empty calories. Okay. And they're just going to take up headspace and pollute your brain, distract you from your purpose. And they're going to stop you from creating. And ultimately, that's what you are here to do. You are a creator, whether you believe it or not, in some form. Doesn't have to be an artist, by the way. We're here to create things. But the problem is we get distracted and we spend most of our time consuming. And if you're consuming junk food, empty calories, then you put junk in, you get junk out. Okay, it's just one of the natural laws. So James Allen in As a Man Thinketh talks about the fact that your mind, your brain is like a garden. This real estate you have here in between your ears is fertile soil. And what it will do is it will grow whatever you put into it. This is a really key concept to think about. Again, like contemplate, and that's the whole point of these conversations, is to go a little bit deeper. You don't need to watch me. You don't need to have the video switched on. I will strip out the audio as well, so you can just listen. Contemplate this. Let it sink in. Let the seed sink into the soil. So your mind is fertile soil. It's like a garden. It will grow whatever you put into it. So if you put weeds in, or if you let weeds run rampant and go wild, they will take hold. However, if you plant roses, which are positive thoughts, positivity, creative thoughts, goals, targets, visions, all of that kind of good stuff, then it will also grow those effectively. So that's a kind of rambling way of like explaining how I feel about social media. I deleted it fully, but as I am a coach and I'm a mentor and I'm a guide, I have a message to share and I need to reach people. And so I needed to re-engage with social media. And so I use social media as a tool. This is a key point that I really want you to understand. So many people are using social media for entertainment, using social media for entertainment, for distraction, for sedation, medication, because they're in pain, they're lost, they're struggling, they're stuck. They feel empty and they feel like they're lacking purpose. Social media is valuable if you use it as a tool and if you understand the relationship you have with it. And as Dr. Martin Shaw says, who's a mythologist, when did the tool become a god? And it has these social media platforms and these influencers. And you've got to understand that most of these influencers have massive corporate backers or corporate kind of affiliate deals. So your brain is being hacked on a large scale. So understand that social media is a tool. And so you need to control the relationship with it and how you use it. Do not use it for entertainment because there's very little of value on there. It's just distraction. It's consumption rather than creation. And that digital distraction, that shallowness, that fractured attention, because there's so much stuff coming at you. Like the human brain is not able to process that much information and that many messages. We were never designed for that. Nature and the natural world works on a much slower cycle. And it's really important to understand this as well. You need to take a breath and you need to kind of reconnect yourself to that kind of slower, more natural cycle because you'll get deep insight from that. So remember the garden. Takeaway point number one, that your brain, your mind is fertile soil. If you allow weeds to grow, if you allow negativity, junk food reels, these hooks, these kind of marketing messages to infect your mind, they're going to take over. If you wallow, kind of do navel gazing and wallow in the fact that you're stuck and you feel stuck in lack and everything is kind of negative and looks dark, then that is going to grow and flourish. On the other hand, if you plant positivity, if you plant positive messages, if you learn, if you study self-development, if you expand yourself on all levels, and there are 6 levels in my system: mind, body, soul, tribe, wealth, legacy. Then if you plant roses, if you plant positivity, if you develop yourself, if you expand, if you have depth and you seek depth, then you will grow and that will flourish as well. So anyway, I'm going to have a sip of coffee. The real point of today's message is very much linked to all of this. And it's the fact that screens and the digital lure of digital kind of like devices and apps and games, the digital world has basically taken over, and it's really taken over our kids' minds. And so I've been thinking a lot recently about how do we reclaim our kids' attention? How do we reconnect them? How do we unplug them from the digital? And how do we reconnect our kids in a way that they want to, in a way that they want to engage with, like the natural world? How do we get them to come back to real life so that they're not constantly stuck in this digital layer? And I think about this a lot in my own life because I have 4 kids, big age range now. So my eldest is 28, soon to be 29, and my youngest is now 11. But they're mostly the digital generation. So they're all very familiar with, like, they're digital natives. So they've grown up with all of these devices, using them as intuitive, and they understand that language of that world. And so I think that's really important. The first thing to understand is that they need to have that digital literacy, that fluency, that understanding of that layer of how the world works, how the future is going to work in some ways. But they've got to be able to balance things out, and we've got to help them balance things out and understand that they need to unplug and they need to go and pay attention to kind of real life. But the thing is, real life is much slower. there's less of a dopamine hit every sort of 5 seconds in real life. If you look at nature and if you look at natural cycles, they work much more slowly. There's no rush. There's not this busyness, this urgency. There's not this gamification of everything that hooks our kids in and gives them dopamine rewards and just lures them into coming back and wanting to just spend all of their time in the digital world. And the thing is that there's a lot of, like, a huge amount of money has been spent on this, creating this addictiveness, this dopamine hacking nature of these devices, these games, these platforms, these apps, particularly the social media platforms. A huge amount of money has been spent developing, researching on psychology and hacking the human brain, essentially, so that this stuff is super addictive. And when you have young minds that are developing, because the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until the age of 25, and that's when you are capable of making complex, rational kind of decision making, and also focusing on kind of like short-term pain for long-term gain, if you like. So like delayed gratification. And our kids, as their minds are developing, are not capable of making those choices and decisions for themselves. And so the key thing is that we have to lead. We have to lead by example. And I think, I posted about this yesterday. Leadership is really self-leadership. Like any kind of leadership, whether you want to lead better as a father or a husband in your family or a business owner or a work as a manager, whatever realm that you are focusing on, if you want to become a better leader, you have to go inwards and you have to start with self leadership. Okay, like lead yourself. Are you capable of leading yourself? And if you're not, then you need to go and do work there before you try and lead in other areas. So you need to lead by example. You need to set the example. You need to have the boundaries yourself. And so I think the thing really, the most powerful thing we can do is, rather than always like enforce restrictions, downtime, cut-offs, because it's hard, because when you look at your kids' peer groups, the chances are almost all of them are having way too much screen time. They're all engaged, and all of us parents have tuned out a little bit and kind of allowed that to creep up and up and up and up. We've shirked our responsibility. And, I'm super guilty of this as well, because I run a business and have 4 kids and I'm busy. And so it's easy to allow the digital kind of, babysitter to take over. So this is not a guilt trip. This is just a thought experiment. And the point of all of these conversations is that I don't have all of the answers. I want to discuss these points. I want to go deeper on them, rather than having this mind-numbing bullshit of like people who are influencers either telling you what you should do, what you should think, how you should eat, how you should behave, what you should do with your life, how you should bring up your kids. Okay. It's more about us working it out for ourselves and finding our own unique path, because we're all different. There's no one size fits all model. I think the thing is, we have to look to ourselves. We have to look to self-leadership. We have to go inwards. We have to look at our I values. And I'll talk about this another time. And so I want you to come full circle and think about where we started, your relationship with social media. All of these bite-sized pieces of information, this junk food for your brain, reels. Are you consuming too many of them? And how distracted are you being? So how much are you allowing yourself to be distracted by digital distraction? How much are you using social media, YouTube, any digital kind of platform for sort of sedation, basically, to distract yourself, to entertain yourself? I think we need to basically reclaim our own relationships with social media, understand that it is a useful tool. But if you go and if you use it as a tool, and if you understand that you need to set the boundaries and you need to be in charge of the relationship rather than the other way around. So I'll leave you with a little kind of insight from this morning. So I go for a hike every morning, pretty much. I kind of, before I step into the digital world again, because a lot of our work is computer based, with pixel pushers nowadays, depending on what you do. I go for a walk every morning. I go for a hike, and there's an amazing hill behind my house, and I go up on a hike and I think. And usually I take my phone and I actually make content, but I've stopped doing that recently because I've started to leave my phone behind so I can again, unplug from digital and reconnect to kind of like the natural world, because you get so much insight, you get so many downloads of creativity, and you get answers to questions. It's a beautiful kind of relationship you can have, because the answers are out there, or they're in here, and you can tap into them if you get quiet, and if you, again, get rid of the distractions, and if you listen. But when we're distracted making content, or like listening to a podcast, or reading something, listening to music, whatever it may be, we're taken away from that, we're distracted, and so we don't get those messages, we don't get those downloads, we don't connect. And so I was having this hike this morning, and I stop off at the top of the hill often, and I sort of meditate. I'll stand there for 10 minutes. I'll have a stretch. I've got a little mobility routine I do. I'll have a stretch. I'll breathe. I'll try and ground myself. Okay, so I'll stand up. I'll do like a standing meditation, ground myself, listen, tune into my surroundings. And what I realized is that it's incredibly hard, because the A3, like dual carriageway, is quite near. It's a fair few miles away, but it's relatively close. And also, we're kind of in a flight path from Gatwick and Heathrow, depending on where planes are going. And so this morning I was thinking, and I was listening, and I was tuning in, and I realized that basically I couldn't hear nature. I can't hear the natural world anymore, because it's completely drowned out by the roar of traffic on the A3, and by the thunder of like aircraft going overhead every couple of minutes. And I think that this made me really think about this piece of content I wanted to create, this deeper conversation I wanted to have, because I think that is it's a lesson in there for the place we find ourselves in now as humans, as a society, as a culture. Nature, the natural world, what we are intimately connected with, because in terms of evolution, we have been in close contact with the earth and natural rhythms for hundreds of thousands of years. We've been modern humans for about 200 plus thousand years. Sorry, about 2.6 million as like modern human variation, but Homo sapiens for a couple of 100,000 years. And in that time, we've been intimately connected with, plugged into the natural world, the natural cycles, the natural frequency, the circadian rhythm, the light dark cycle, the Schumann resonances. Excuse me, we've been attuned, excuse me, to nature and those natural cycles. But recently it's been drowned out, and that connection is missing, and that has been drowned out by digital, by busyness, by human travel and interaction and convenience, and all of the things that we want, or we think we want, but don't give us meaning and purpose. And so I think more than anything, and the reason people, you might be listening to this, most people won't make it this far. This is 17 minutes of content and a conversation. Most people will never make it this far. They'll just bail out of this because they don't have any depth left. They don't have an attention span left, and they're bouncing on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and they're hopping and they're scanning and they're searching for external answers and solutions, and those don't exist. The solutions and the answers you're looking for are internal, and they come from reconnecting to who and what you are, which is a part of nature. I haven't really shared these ideas before because it's a little bit scary, because a lot of people think I'm fucking crazy, and that may be it, but I want to share this stuff now. So the point is that the chances are that you're listening to this and watching this, and if you've made it this far, because you are craving depth, you are craving meaning, you are trying to reconnect to some kind of purpose, you're kind of trying to get that spark back again and fan the flames and get the embers going and roaring back up into a flame in your life, so you can feel motivated and engaged and connected again, because you feel this emptiness and this vacuum and this disconnection, like a fucking ring donut. You have this big hole in your core, and so you're searching for meaning and you're searching for purpose again. And I believe, really truthfully, like at my core, that what we are missing and what we are searching for is connection to the wild. It's reconnection to the wild, what's left of it, and the natural world. And that's that background anxiety and tension that we feel all of the time, gnawing away, nibbling away. And we go and we look for solutions digitally. We distract ourselves. We have fractured, shallow attention, and we consume rather than create, because that's what the rest of the world is doing, and that's what everyone is telling us. That's what we should be doing. That's what society dictates as success. Okay, how many followers you have, how many likes you have, how much engagement you have with your content, how much money you're making from that. And so we have these measures of success which we are told we need to tick the boxes of, and if we don't do that, we don't fit, we don't belong. But I believe that the emptiness at your core is because we've lost that connection to the wild, to the natural world. It's been drowned out by the roar of the traffic and the busyness and the thunder of the aircraft and the digital distraction which drags us away from who and what we are. So, how do we help reclaim our kids' minds? How do we reclaim our own minds is the more important question, because we need to lead by example. We need to lead from the core, self-leadership in relationship with the natural world and nature in the wild. So really, we need to go and reclaim our own minds. Understand that social media is a tool and it's good for sharing a message. But my goal and my agenda, and I want to be very open about this, is to get you off social media, to reclaim your mind, help reconnect you to who and what you are, unplug you from the digital, reconnect you to the wild self within reason. I'm not saying you go and live in the woods and, shun all your worldly possessions, because that's unrealistic. Those times have passed. But the way that we can help our kids is by leading by example and reclaiming our own minds and our own attention spans and our own depth. And we need to somehow, and I don't have the answers for this. I have a concept called Project Playground, which I used to run a snowboarding company, like a clothing company, years ago. And I had a thing I created called Project Playground, which was like, we do snowboarding, skateboarding, surfing, all these sports, mountain biking that we love, which rely on the natural world, but we're destroying it. So if we think of it as our playground, let's go out and look after it. And so I don't really have all of the answers, but I know that if we can reconnect ourselves to the natural world and lead by example, if we can, then we can reconnect our kids, we can reclaim their minds. And it's a balance. Of course, they should have digital devices and use them, but we also need them to understand that there is a real world out there and want them to engage with that by choice, perhaps over the digital. And we have to make it exciting. So we have to reclaim that playground relationship. And I think if we can get them connected to outdoor activities, sports, things that like literally just feed your soul without talking and lecturing, but just showing by example, I think that's the best way that we can serve them. Because ultimately, what is there for them to look forward to? I think the reason so many of the younger generations are anxious and mental health is on the rise, is because, they are a disconnected generation. They're connected digitally, but they're disconnected from who and what they are in the natural world, because they've been brought up, quite frankly, by a generation of hollow men and women who struggle with lack of meaning and lack of depth, and who feel lost and stuck in their own lives. That's it. That's all I've got for today. If you made it this far, congratulations. You're my kind of person. So we'll have some more of these conversations. I would love your thoughts and feedback, because this is interactive. This is a discussion. This is, these are concepts that I'm testing in the lab of the mind. And so I'd love your thoughts. Have a good day.